Hi, Belarus. Hi, Belarus. Hi, Belarus. Hi, Belarus. Hi, Belarus. There will be an assembly line for Belarusian tractors here. The end of a unipolar world is a great chance for other countries to rise.
Belarus can help us with food security.
Between us, it's not just connected relations, but like friends. Seeing how you work, it gives the impression of knowledgeable, skilled people who understand agriculture. Our relationship is primarily a huge contribution from the presidents of Belarus and Brazil. They can never forgive President Lukashenko for being a man of the people, for truly understanding what it means to work. Local farmers say, "Give us Belarusian equipment."
I wish I could send all these flowers to Belarus.
Belarusian equipment can easily operate even in the harshest conditions.
We've been working with Gomselmash equipment for 10 years and are very satisfied.
We chose Belarusian tractors because after studying we realized it's the best offer on the market.
We have many requests regarding imports from Belarus.
Brazil always opposes sanctions.
In Kenya, Lukashenko is called a strong president.
He defends his country's sovereignty and the interests of the people. He is a great personality.
Here they know and respect our president.
We have many media outlets in Brazil funded by American money. They just retransmit Washington's guidelines.
He lost his sight in prison, where he was held on false charges. Without Lukashenko, Belarus wouldn't have survived in such a geographical position. Often he was told, "You have what other countries don't." And cherish it. The support of the governments of Belarus and Indonesia will help businesses operate efficiently.
Vietnam is our gateway to everything.
Orders for equipment are increasing more and more.
Republic of Belarus Street, one of the main streets in this city.
I am proud to represent Belarus.
I won't give up my beloved. Clear policy and a big journey. The program will have a different format for a while. In the upcoming episodes, we will work outside the TV studio. In just a few months, we traveled 60,000 kilometers to show not just in words, but in deeds. The world is big, and in this world, they successfully work with Belarus and are ready to continue despite the artificial barriers of the West and the absurd policy of isolation. New partners and new markets. The long arc and export diversification. These messages are increasingly heard at a high level, not only in our country. Is the sanction pressure really a time of opportunity? And who is against the dictate of Western values? Places where Belarusian TV cameras have never been. 4 major continents. People, cities, enterprises where they know, appreciate, and respect men. We start the story from Latin America. Diplomats say that understanding Latin America is extremely difficult, but if you succeed, it's a love for life. Our team visited Brazil and Argentina. They of course have their own specifics, different history, traditions, mentality, and present, but there is a place for Belarus in the heart of every region. The largest economy in Latin America is more than 10,000 kilometers from Belarus. But it's a barrier for the modern and fast world. The country across the Atlantic Ocean calls itself industrial agricultural and pays great attention to the development of the agro-industrial complex. Do you feel familiar notes with Belarus? For the application of technology and equipment, there is practically an endless field. Brazil is the 5th largest by area, 7th by population in the world. After the USA, it is the 2nd largest economy in the Western Hemisphere. And only in advertising brochures, Brazil is a country of exoticism and beaches, coffee and carnival. All this is there, but the local life is much richer and more complex, which we will talk about today.
In the elite shopping center of São Paulo, it's always quite measured during the day. Bright signs, famous brands, and very discerning buyers. They don't always pay attention to price tags here, but to quality, definitely. Our guide among the glittering showcases is Grigory Goldschlager, a longtime partner of various Belarusian enterprises. For example, he has been working with the Orsha linen mill for 30 years. He supplies local designers with raw materials from Belarusian fields. Linen is valued and loved here.
Since linen is considered an expensive product for the masses here, this material is used for the elite.
Such skirts and jackets made from Belarusian material, Brazilians are ready to buy even for $600. They also sew shirts and other clothes. Belarusian linen is present in the products of several major Brazilian brands. And only in this shopping center can you find it. On several floors at once.
Belarusian linen attracts because it is of very high quality.
His company employs more than 20 people. It is one of the largest in Latin America for importing Belarusian products. Grigory is a partner not only of the light industry, but also of the petrochemical industry of our country. Now he plans to engage in the supply of potash despite all the difficulties.
We don't have potash fertilizers. We have only one place, so we need to drill. Then this salt is mixed with water. Then it is dried. And the process itself costs 1.5 to 2 times more than the Sologorsk potassium chloride mine.
The businessman's story is a ready-made script for a movie. Born in the USSR, he began serving in the army, still with us, in Mosikowshchina. Then he moved to São Paulo to his aunt, where after the 70s, he tried many fields in search of a business niche. Despite this, he often visits Belarus since the 90s. He has seen a lot.
The first time I came to Belarus was... Minsk was a shabby city. When was that? Yes, 1991. The station was generally stinky. Credit must be given to Alexander Grigorievich for taking care of the country. Why was it preserved? Because Alexander Grigorievich is a smart person. Lukashenko worked a lot for Belarus. Today, when I travel all over Belarus. Everything is in order, the roads are excellent. He maintains them. Besides, Lukashenko made a very big update to the industry. Such plants as Mogilev Fiber, Orsha Linen Mill. Orsha invested more than $170 million. This is a person who cares about the country.
He has something to compare with. Brazil is called a fabulously rich country. There are a huge number of minerals in the depths, but they could develop faster. The lack of reforms, corruption, and high tax burden hinder. Some companies pay up to 40% of turnover. At the same time, Grigory lives and works in the main city of the country. This is what Brazilians call São Paulo, the industrial locomotive of the economy.
São Paulo, the largest city in Brazil and all of South America, is among the world's top in terms of population. Together with the suburbs, more than 20 million. The capital of the state of the same name is considered slightly chaotic, maybe not as bright and naturally beautiful as Rio, but it is undoubtedly the most important and richest point on the map of Brazil. It is here, in the heart of the Brazilian economy, that a third of the national GDP is generated. And it is here that for decades, the largest businessmen and companies have been located, engaged in imports, including Belarusian products.
São Paulo is primarily about money. The city is known for banning outdoor advertising, and the roads are so busy that cars can only drive on a special schedule. For example, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., if you break the rule, the fine is up to 5,000 Brazilian reals. That's almost $1,000. Because of the pace of life, the city is often called the soulless jungle.
In one of the most prestigious areas of São Paulo, you can't just drop by a neighbor's plot or someone from the street. High fences, here about 2.5 meters, they're probably even 4, plus barbed wire and electric current. All this, of course, is a forced measure. They can rob you here too, although it doesn't happen often. But to avoid trouble, homeowners also hire special security. Several armed men constantly patrol the street, and it costs about $200 a month. But in general, São Paulo is a good example that work leaves no time for mischief. From a safety point of view, the metropolis is much calmer than Rio, although it's better not to wander around the outskirts in the evenings. In Rio de Janeiro, there are carnivals, beaches, and a warm climate. Here, it's the jungle of buildings and offices of serious companies, banks, and stock exchanges. This mental difference is expressed by locals in a very short but quite popular saying: while everyone dances in Rio, everyone works in São Paulo.
One way or another, these two cities are the foundation of Brazilian culture, life, and economy. If you look at the map, they are located in the southwest, so the rest of the country is somewhat away from the financial centers. Add ports, a huge gap between the rich and the poor, and of course one of the key issues for Brazil, that very question of security. But we will return to it and Rio later today. Brazil is a country of contrasts and somewhere even paradoxes. Anyone familiar with local life will confirm this. Despite the problems, the state has enormous potential. The Organization for Economic Cooperation is very positive about what is happening in the economy lately.
Brazil is in 4th place in the world in terms of growth rates. Agriculture is the lifeblood of Brazil's food security and financial stability. Brazilians are the world's leaders in exporting orange juice concentrate. And of course, coffee is another important element of the local agro-industrial complex. Every year, an average of 44.5 million bags of aromatic beans are exported to 128 countries. Each bag weighs 60 kilograms. Coffee plantations are a national pride of the country. 3.5 million people are employed here, servicing more than 6 billion coffee trees. The main tobacco and coffee region of the planet is also a leader in soybean exports, occupying half of the world market. Prices for grain, oil, and animal feed are constantly rising, attracting thousands of farmers to top crops. Today, almost 250,000 farms in Brazil are engaged in soybean production. The country is also in the top 3 for corn exports, actively growing sugarcane, potatoes, tomatoes, watermelons, and other agricultural crops. And for this, equipment is needed, and here our country comes to the forefront.
The time is very interesting now, and distant countries geographically are becoming closer to us. Brazil for us is that point in the long arc. Let's talk about this region, about Latin America, where we can and should establish ourselves. You know that this is the largest country in Latin America, with 216 million inhabitants. It is an agricultural country. You understand perfectly well that there is a synergy of our interests here. An agricultural country needs fertilizers. To harvest their crops 3 times or more a year, an agricultural country needs equipment to cultivate the land. Again, we see our presence here, but not only in this. Let's look further. This is a country that is dynamically and steadily moving forward. They think about ecology. Again, we see ourselves here. Again, we see niches here that we can enter. We Brazilians also talk a lot about the proper use of natural resources. How can we not remember Belarusian technologies? Our experience is not only in Latin America. I'm talking about Ecuador, Venezuela.
The Belarusian ambassador in Brazil is confident that entering this market requires working 24/7, which he urges Belarusian enterprises to do. Be more active, bolder, and sometimes more creative. Diplomatic efforts will undoubtedly help, but without good marketing, it's impossible. An example of productive joint work concerns MTZ. Imagine the last Belarusian tractor arrived in Brazil. Hard to believe, back in 1983. But very soon the situation will change drastically.
In the future, it's hard to get used to 2 things in Brazil. The time difference, 6 hours with Minsk, and the long distances. To find out where Belarusian tractors will be assembled in the future, today we have to travel 5.5 hours one way, then return. But if we leave early, we might make it in 1 day. Although such mileage is nothing for the country, there are practically no options since the railways are poorly developed here. So at 7 a.m. we head northeast of Brazil to look at a promising project between the 2 countries, which every interview mentions it, both local politicians and journalists.
Goiás State, Itumbiara City, the very center of the country. Just 4 hours from here is the port of Santos, also the largest in Brazil. Overall, you couldn't find a better point for logistics. From here, it's convenient to deliver to the north, west, south, and east. And it is in this workshop that Belarusian tractors of models 112 and 152 will be produced under the Maqueguero brand. Getting here is quite a challenge, and sometimes you don't envy the driver. Steep hills and turns, very sharp sections, so you need to hold the wheel tightly. And watch your speed. There is practically no road police on the highways. Violators are caught by cameras. The minimum fine is $40, and the money is simply deducted from your card. Also, the railway network in Brazil is poorly developed, and all the logistics burden falls on road transport. So you need to load the truck as tightly as possible. The length of trucks here is limited to 30 meters, but if more were allowed, there's no doubt that entire road trains would be moving on the roads. Itumbiara is one of the hottest cities in Brazil. During our filming, it was 39 degrees outside, but it's not just the scorching sun you have to deal with. The doors are usually wide open for ventilation. And colorful guests often come and crawl into the workshop. Foxes, raccoons, and endangered snakes. The latter are carefully taken back to the field, but they come back again, apparently to check out the production. The Jose Ronaldo company has been selling generators for a long time, and today, part of the products can still be seen in this building. Business is going well. Our competencies will allow us to capture the tractor market as well, he confidently states.
If everything works out, our enterprise will only be able to meet half of the real demand. So we are planning and looking ahead. This land you see, we bought it. We are designing and planning, and this area will allow us to double our production capacity. Brazil's agricultural sector is very segmented, and we are targeting small tractors.
Belarusian journalists are here for the first time, and this line is the first sign of Belarusian agricultural presence in Brazil. A sort of trial run for local farmers who desperately need affordable helpers.
25% of GDP, 50% of exports. The agricultural sector is super important for Brazil, but the structure is interesting. More than half are family farms, very small ones, and every fifth farmer works manually without using machinery. Of course, almost all global brands are present in the market, but prices start at $100,000 and up. For many, this is just an astronomical amount. This is where Belarus is trying to find its niche, a small tractor at a reasonable price, just what the huge market needs. Considering that the government supports small farming and provides loans for purchasing agricultural machinery.
The work ahead has been calculated in detail here. The business component is spot on. In different regions, to avoid losing on logistics, they want to create several such assembly lines. And for the start, they chose the center of Brazil. The distance to all parts of the country is more or less the same, perfect for the first push.
We chose Belarusian tractors because after studying the market, we realized it's the best offer. And in operation, your equipment is simple and reliable. We presented these models at the largest exhibitions in Brazil, and everywhere there was increased attention and interest, especially from private farmers.
Such a tractor in Brazil is already called the People's Tractor. We haven't even opened yet, and we've already received over 8,000 orders. Let's be honest, the Belarusian engine is still Chinese, but Brazilian colleagues are serious. After all, the market of 200 million Brazil is just bottomless, with a territory of 8.5 million square kilometers. Cultivate as much as you want. A joke from Brazilians. The Belarusian tractor, like a Brazilian girl, doesn't break down for a long time.
It's not just a quality product, it's a tractor that has no analogs because it's simple and repairable. That's exactly what we need in the fields.
You can't just deliver a ready-made tractor to Brazil. The market is heavily regulated, duties are very high, and the entry point is precisely this kind of cooperation with local companies. A localization level of more than 50% allows minimizing tax and customs expenses, and thus compete on price with well-known brands. This practice can be scaled to other South American countries, Paraguay, Uruguay, as well as this kind of diplomatic marketing. These are Belarusian tractors in the central square of Brazil's capital. They were brought specifically for the agricultural exhibition, and Belarusians attracted huge interest from the local public. Our beauties were examined by both relevant ministers and the President of Brazil. So the test drive at the highest level was successfully passed.
What does a joint tractor mean for Brazil? It's not a tractor brought from Belarus. It's a tractor made in Brazil based on Belarusian technologies and components with the participation of their universities. Workers, their spare parts, their elements. Of course, it's much easier to say this in an interview than to do it. Finding these parts to fit, and so on and so on. So now the process is, of course, technical. It's meticulous, necessary. I hope that the Minsk tractor plant and the Ministry of Industry will not lose the intensity with which we started well this year.
Technology is technology. It either plows the field or harvests the crop, but it still needs to be grown. And here, without fertilizers, it's tough. Brazilian senators do not hide it. The country needs imports. And they don't want to give up Belarusian products here despite Western obstacles. Fertilizers, it should be noted, 85% is Brazil's dependency. And Belarus has fertilizers that can help. Unfortunately, we are forced to find a way out of dependency. In my opinion, Belarus has the best technology in the world for producing the kind of tractors Brazil needs.
Moving to Rio de Janeiro. Without this city, the story of Brazil would be incomplete. The city translates from Portuguese as January River, a tourist and the second most important economic center of the country. The approximate population is 6,800,000 people. Even the city authorities won't give an exact number. We'll explain why a bit later. But we Belarusians of course know Rio like this. And this is how Ostap Bender's dream appears to the locals and inattentive tourists. Mostly thefts and robberies happen in front of the Christ statue. The main database on cities and countries, NEWS.BY, annually includes Rio in the top 5 most dangerous cities in the world. The crime index is 90 points out of 100 possible, which is considered an extremely dangerous place to be. However, local politicians believe that the new old president Lula da Silva will fix the situation.
President Lula's policy is about caring for Brazilians. The main focus is on eradicating poverty. A huge amount of time is devoted to social programs. In foreign policy, the president has also strongly integrated into the global agenda. For us, the key point is protecting the welfare of our people. And here we have a lot in common with Belarus.
By the way, it was in Rio that the famous reset of Belarus-Brazil relations happened. On March 22, 2010, Alexander Lukashenko and Lula da Silva not only held a historic meeting, but also adopted a declaration on joint cooperation. That same year, our embassy opened in Brazil. A year later, the Brazilian diplomatic mission appeared in Minsk. Since then, the dialogue across the ocean has become much more active. But we want more. Already, in 2023, the Belarusian leader proposed that Brazil define a roadmap for developing relations and invited the president of Brazil to visit Belarus.
Our relations are primarily due to the enormous contributions of the presidents of Belarus and Brazil. Our countries build social policies, views on the problems of ordinary people, and help the poor. In this, our leaders are very similar. Lukashenko and Lula solve the real problems of their people. Today, the distance between countries loses its influence. This also affects the building of relationships and strong ties between geographically distant countries. Countries with which we have maintained very friendly, trusting relationships for many years. Countries with which we see the world through the same eyes, share the principles of a just world order, and non-interference in internal affairs, sovereign equality of states. And of course, we support each other on international platforms, defending fundamental interests and protecting our sovereignty and independence.
Belarus is indeed aiming for long-term partnerships. It's time to expand cooperation. Alexander Lukashenko has repeatedly stated this recently. Our trade interests and new potential lie in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. As for the latter, Belarus sees Brazil as one of its most important trading partners. At the same time, Minsk maintains diplomatic relations with all 33 countries of Latin America and the Caribbean.
As a high-tech country, we will build our relations with Latin America. Africa, Latin America, Asia, our trade interests, our new potential lies there. Joining the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and strengthening ties with ASEAN countries has already opened doors for Belarus to the fastest growing and most promising markets.
Overall, Brazilian society is on the rise today, in the sense that the federation, consisting of 26 states, is gradually waking up from the sedative, skillfully administered by the Americans in the last century. But of course, decolonizing the mind and economy is a long and complex process. Brazil's policy has been shaped by the USA for many years, but the previous President Bolsonaro and the current Lula da Silva have taken a much firmer grip on the helm of sovereignty. However, not everyone shares the enthusiasm of the current Brazilian leader. There are deputies and senators who say that BRICS is certainly a crucial project, but where would we be without the USA? This political split shows that Brazil's entire geopolitics today is like a split beach volleyball. But journalists, the conscience of the Brazilian nation, are much sharper and more unequivocal in their statements.
In the USA, they pretend to carry the flag of democracy, but they do it in a hegemonic style. This means they impose certain rules and demands on the rest of the world. If these countries do not accept these rules, they are immediately labeled undemocratic. It's simple. Russia, China, and Belarus are good examples of this policy. The only one who dared to challenge the USA is Julian Assange, who confirmed with facts that Americans twist facts and rules as they please. You see, setting rules is one thing, but respecting the rights of others is quite another. And the USA does not consider this. I believe that no one has the right to impose rules on others.
Journalist Bren Waltman is known for his sharp and sometimes unpleasant statements, especially disliked by part of the Brazilian elite, as many have money in American banks and their children study there. For his stance, he often received reprimands from mass publications like Globo and others, but he does not hide his opinion from the public, including regarding Belarus. He can talk about our country for a long time.
What deserves respect and distinguishes Belarus is that it demands respect for itself and its people. After all, the geopolitical structure is built like this today. Some want respect and some do not. And some countries allow themselves to disrespect Belarus. As a global politics observer, I can say unequivocally, Belarus cannot be ignored. It has preserved and developed healthcare industry and state institutions. You did not let the country be destroyed. You held on. That's a victory. It's one of the best examples we have after the collapse of the USSR. You resist pressure. And it's clear that President Lukashenko is the target of Western sabotage, which they carry out year after year. But you managed to give a worthy response. Belarus is a good example. You have gone through a difficult transformation and know how to withstand pressure.
Respect and reforms are actively discussed in Brazil today. The changes initiated by President Lula should bear fruit in many areas. In 10 years, Brazil has had 4 heads of state. People want stability and, most importantly, an improved quality of life. Brazilian mainstream media consists of 3 channels and
We have many media outlets in Brazil funded by American money. They simply retransmit Washington's guidelines. Russia started a fratricidal war without reason. Lukashenko and Putin are dictators. I see similar articles about China. All undesirable countries are described by such Brazilian media as needing democracy. But these materials do not reflect the real views of Brazilians. Our people have a different perspective. We don't need the collective West's opinion imposed on us.
the word sanctions also irritates Brazilian business circles. Our country actively bought aircraft parts from Embraer. In return, we supplied those same potassium fertilizers. To understand, a fifth of our potassium exports went across the Atlantic. Brazil did not impose any bans against us. But secondary sanctions, not to mention logistics problems. Brazil always opposes sanctions. They hinder trade between countries. Speaking of the USA and the EU, the USA tries to play the role of a global sheriff who wants to control everything. But we do not agree with this approach. Brazil also opposes sanction pressure on Belarus. It negatively affects our work on the potassium track. And overall, sanctions are an unacceptable tool in relations between countries. This idea is supported by Felipe Fortes. The businessman works with Belavia and also invests in residents of the Belarusian high-tech park. One of the projects is 3D Med. It's a unified platform for medical diagnostics. The unique development allows diagnoses to be made even across the ocean.
Interest in the product is enormous, despite restrictions and threats from Western countries.
Sanctions are the wrong path for international relations. States should not impose restrictions because of what a country does on its territory. It's just a tool of pressure trying to impose a certain will. But for our countries, it's a window of opportunity. Projects, investments, even potassium fertilizers, all this is possible, though not without difficulties.
We are conducting an interview with Felipe Fortes near one of the most expensive hotels in Copacabana. This way there's less chance of becoming a victim of criminals. Armed police patrols are constantly on duty nearby, but the entrepreneur talks about the West's robbery on the international stage. Sanctions against Belarus undermine Brazilian private business and destroy connections built over the years.
Most of the potassium fertilizers that came from Belarus were tried to be replaced, but this could not be done fully, and the lack of fertilizers has caused noticeable harm to farmers. Canada, Israel, and Chile are trying to sell us their potassium fertilizers, but they are not as good and are significantly more expensive. And we would like this issue to be resolved, for example, through private Brazilian firms.
The large social divide is another serious headache for the government. This is quite evident even in the heart of the Brazilian capital. Look here, behind the buses is the cultural center of the city. A kilometer from here is the concentration of all the power in the country. The Ministry Alley, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, both houses of parliament, the Supreme Court, the Presidential Palace, and right next to them are these guys in tents. It's better not to get too close there. And of course, this is not a picnic, but a permanent residence. Moreover, the poor in the country have official status. No one drives them away, and they can even call the police and ambulance to their location. Although most of the medicine in the country is paid for, and they have little chance of getting adequate help.
Such homeless people here are called not bums but street dwellers, that is, ordinary citizens. And it is believed that it is their conscious choice to be wherever they can, without a permanent roof over their heads. Politicians often mention the poor for a reason. According to the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, 20 million live below the poverty line. That's every 10th Brazilian. The most dangerous side of such a difficult life is the favelas. The capital, Brasilia, São Paulo, and of course Rio. To varying degrees, but they are densely covered with spontaneous settlements. The active favelization of large cities occurred in the 1970s. The reason was the construction boom. The poor built for the rich, but could not afford housing in the same Rio. But Brazilians are not lacking in pride. For them, the word favela is an insult, so they call themselves community.
In Rio de Janeiro, there are about 833 communities. Most likely after the pandemic, this number has increased, because naturally, Rio has not become economically better off. And in 833 communities, approximately 24% of the city's residents live. That is about 1,700,000 people. Almost every fourth resident of Rio de Janeiro is a community member.
We filmed in the Santa Marta community, a settlement literally hundreds of meters from the famous Copacabana beach, where wealthy Brazilians and of course tourists relax. Moreover, they are served by the residents of the slums, and sometimes they even tip off their own who have had too much or are flaunting their jewelry. In general, they work as informants. Just imagine, in Rio there are 833 favelas, and the city authorities have contact with a maximum of 15 settlements. The government simply does not have access to the rest. Who lives there? What happens there? Only the drug gangs know, having divided the power among themselves. In the slums, many live not only without money but also without documents. Their social leaders are football, samba, and carnival, or service in the police, which is fraught with consequences. but often another system works. I was born here, and I will most likely remain this way.
It's a certain mindset, a certain way of thinking, and certain limitations that this thinking imposes on a person's opportunities. The Federal University of Brasilia conducted an analysis, a study that showed that for a person to leave the community, it takes 8 generations. And that's 8 generations intellectual development of the family for their children grow to the level of leaving the community. Because moving a person from one apartment to another, from this house to an apartment in Copacabana, does not stop them from being spiritually and mentally a community member.
Some favelas are located right on the ocean's edge, so naturally, no one can control what and in what quantities are brought there. Analysts believe that smuggling and drugs can bring in up to $10 billion a year. The rest of the world sees Brazilian poverty as a source of inspiration. For example, Michael Jackson filmed his music video in the Santa Marta favela. Speaking of the video, the Rio City Hall learned about it only from the TV broadcast, as Jackson's team negotiated directly with the drug dealers. Among Brazilians, there is an opinion that it was because of the song that they really don't care about us. The city lost the right to host the 2004 Olympic Games.
This is not Rio de Janeiro. One wants to exclaim, looking at the favelas in the Brazilian capital. They are here too, although not as large scale. But the living conditions, if they can be called that, are largely the same. Many here also live without electricity, water, and central heating. And those who have them do not pay for them. Here too there is total poverty, unsanitary conditions, and unemployment. There are no schools or hospitals here either, and crime and drugs rule the streets. Such spots where you can step out and speak in front of the camera are rare, but still a huge risk. All these are completely illegal constructions. And just imagine that over 11 million people live in such conditions in Brazil.
The capital's favelas are generally not so grim, although there are different neighborhoods. For example, here the government is trying to bring the illegal settlement back to normal life. They built a sports ground, opened a store, and a central park nearby. In the evenings they grill meat here, and it seems anyone can come for a picnic. But even though these favelas have been officially pacified, as they say in Brazil, outsiders are still looked at differently here. The capital of the large country of Brazil is also a kind of bright contrast. A very small city was artificially created in the early 60s. Here are the ministries, embassies, and the president's palace. When you stand in the center of the country's main square, it's hard to believe this is the heart of such a vast nation. But on January 8, 2023, it was far from calm here. The unrest will go down in history as the January 8 protests. As often happens while the vast country slept, a coup could have taken place in the capital. By the way, not all the windows in the presidential palace have been replaced yet, and society in the country has become noticeably more aware, watching the West's antics.
Brazil is a sovereign country. The January 8 episode served as an example of how the government should respond to such challenges. Moreover, President Lula constantly tells the presidents of the USA, Germany, and others that we are a sovereign country and will not allow interference in our affairs. And regarding Ukraine, we also propose peaceful negotiations, dialogue between countries. The UN is a good platform, but it no longer works. A new approach is needed. All these are challenges of the new multipolar world, in the construction of which Brazil and Belarus are equally interested.
The official interpretation of those events. The election loser Jair Bolsonaro sent his supporters to storm the palace. However, after the coup failed, he immediately fled to the USA. This opened many people's eyes to who the ultimate instigator of the revolution was. The attempted coup also brought Belarus and Brazil closer. We went through something similar too.
We in Brazil understand that every country should have the right to autonomy and sovereignty. Therefore, such powerful leaders as Alexander Lukashenko are necessary for countries. Belarus is a powerful country with colossal potential. It is a regional leader. Without Lukashenko, Belarus would simply not survive in such a geographical position. In our language, there is an expression about a crocodile swimming on its back so that piranhas don't eat it. So is your country.
The president of Belarus has a significant role, not only nationally, but also internationally. He stands against the USA. It's difficult, and only a few have managed to stand against the USA for long. But in reality, he is protecting the sovereignty of his country and the interests of his people. He has a huge personality. Lukashenko is an example for leaders of other countries who might want to give in. Judge for yourself. The Americans failed to change the leadership in Belarus to one that suits them. And this is a fundamental achievement of President Lukashenko.
There are many connections between Brazil and Belarus, and this also applies to art. Sergei Kuvshinchikov is a musician and conductor. He has been living in Brazil for almost 10 years and plays the bassoon in a local orchestra. With his Belarusian musical education, he easily won a competition with 11 people per spot. Over the years, he has added the Belovetskaya Pushcha to the local repertoire. He took the events of January 8th, as well as those in Belarus and Ukraine, quite painfully.
Here in Brazil, it is absolutely neutral. Even more than neutral, it rather leans towards Belarus and Russia. Thank God this didn't happen here.
This disaster, what sanctions, what bans?
Well, how can you ban it? I don't understand how you can ban crossing the border. I don't understand this. Belarus cannot abandon its obligations. Someone leaves a friend in a difficult situation. This is abnormal. I'm not ashamed at all that I'm Belarusian, that I speak Russian.
Fate also brought Galina Guli to this country. 10 years ago, she moved to the capital following her husband. She is a chemist, biologist, and teaches at the National University of Brazil.
I haven't seen anything more thorough or diverse than in Belarus, or let's say in the post-Soviet space. That education that we received in Belarus served me well for obtaining a doctoral degree and status in the States, and here as well.
The University of Brasilia externally resembles a snake with a huge number of pocket offices. Like the city, it was also built in the 60s, but some parts were never completed. Now students interact in a colorful, eclectic atmosphere. Student life also has its peculiarities. For example, students have separate rooms where even teachers do not enter. They say it's democracy.
In Belarus, education is treated more strictly, more fundamentally. Many subjects and aspects that we studied in high school are taught here in the first year of university. The film Fear.
Galina has deeply felt the paradox of Brazilian life. She has been working without a salary for 15 years. At some interviews, she was told her qualifications were too high. At others, positions had to be reserved for locals, Brazilians. So she is a volunteer teacher, but things may change in the coming years, as BRICS consultations are underway about a kind of education unification. Recognition of diplomas and experience, and Belarus is actively cooperating with the Union. By the way, for Brazilians, BRICS is not just a club of interests.
BRICS establishes a new understanding of why such unions exist. countries want to interact and unite. This model should be used more and more. BRICS countries want a multipolar world with the interests of all participants in mind. Belarus has all the potential and chances to establish new alliances and unions with other countries.
The unipolar world is on its last legs while the multipolar one is just beginning. But we understand that this process is far from simple. The Americans respond with sanctions and bans against countries that oppose their hegemony. Therefore, the current time is extremely challenging, but it is also a time of new horizons for a multipolar reality. Regional leaders like Brazil, India, China, and Russia are doing everything possible to change the world. And that's why the collective West, led by the USA, reacts so aggressively.
It's a cliché, but Brazil is indeed a country of contrasts and great prospects. Billionaires live 100 meters from poor favelas. There are huge oil reserves, but cars are actively fueled with ethanol. It's a land of eternal carnival, but also political instability. Many hope that the show has finally ended. Emotional, distant, with a complex plot, but still ours. Like the next point on our route.
Buenos Aires, like Minsk, has not been spared by history. So much so that the city had to be founded twice. In the 16th century, just 5 years after its founding, it was burned down by the indigenous people, although the subway here was opened in the early 20th century. And the world's longest street, stretching over 20,000 houses, is also here. The name Argentina can be translated as the Silver Country. 46 million people, about 3 million square kilometers of land, Maradona, Messi, beef, and defaults. This could be the beginner's guide to Argentina.
Argentina's development in the 21st century resembles a roller coaster. Short rises are followed by sharp falls. Today, one of Latin America's largest economies is in trouble again. Inflation is soaring, prices have more than doubled in a year, placing the country among the world's top alongside Venezuela and Libya in this sad The local currency, the peso, is rapidly depreciating, with several exchange rates and significant differences between them.
The final inflation rate for 2023 is 148%. The infamous debt to the IMF, $56 billion, the country tries to forget. But the Western credit noose is not easily removed.
What does a shopping trip look like for an ordinary Argentine? Well, first of all, not to one store but to several. You need to visit at least 5 to 6 to compare prices. This is a mandatory step. Goods are rapidly becoming more expensive, and stores constantly change price tags, sometimes by as much as 10% in just one day. The price of the same pack of coffee in supermarkets can vary several times over, so it's worth walking a few extra blocks. Some restaurants have stopped listing prices on menus to avoid constantly reprinting them. Now, instead of familiar peso amounts, Argentines see QR codes. It's easier to increase prices electronically and try to keep up with inflation. Birthday.
The economic chaos predictably led people to vote for a completely different kind of politician in the last presidential elections. Charismatic radical Javier Milei, a libertarian and rock musician, will now try to pull the country out of the crisis. But while politicians fight for offices and ratings, work in the Argentine fields never stops. Farmers have no time to rest. To talk to farmers, we will travel from Buenos Aires to the city of San Francisco, covering a distance of 700 kilometers. Visually, Argentina looks more like Belarus. Fields, trees, green plantations, you often catch familiar notes here. And the local roads are just excellent, allowing comfortable travel even at high speeds. But agriculture has been slowed down not by the economy, but by relentless natural disasters.
A record drought has been tormenting Argentine farmers for the third year. Rainfall has halved. Winter and spring saw abnormal periods when not a drop fell from the sky for 3 months. This hasn't happened in 100 years. The situation is called catastrophic due to nature's blows. Many farmers went bankrupt, losing most of their crops. Due to low quality, the crops were simply not harvested, making combine work unprofitable. The drought cost the economy $20 billion. Exports fell by 35. Just imagine, about 126 million hectares were affected. That's roughly 75% of all agricultural land.
The drought significantly affects the sales of agricultural machinery, as farmers simply cannot plan their fieldwork. This has been strongly felt by the Gamselmash company in Argentina. It has been operating in the city of San Francisco since 2006. Belarusian agricultural machines are delivered here partially disassembled, without wheels or lights, by ship. Due to harsh weather, climate, and salty water, they undergo special treatment upon arrival. The drought has made clients more cautious and less willing to negotiate. Previously, managers would close a sale in a month and a half. Now it takes 4 or even 5 months. By the way, while we were filming the Gomel brand's branch, several more combines were on their way by sea. There are already potential buyers for them.
We have sold over 70 units of machinery, which are represented in various regions. Argentina is one of the largest meat producers, specifically beef. To grow quality beef, you need not only grazing land, but also quality feed. Our production, our combines allow this. They enable the preparation of high-quality feed.
It's important to understand that selling a combine is an art form. After the sale, the company continues to provide assistance, service work, and training. During the warranty period, oil and filters are changed every 240 engine hours.
Every year, we send reports to Gomel, sharing our experience for Gamselmash to use in their production. If a part is damaged, we determine if it was the client's fault. If so, they must pay for our travel, fuel, hotel stay, and the work done. The season in Argentina starts in September and lasts until the end of May.
During the season, employees barely have time to sleep. They work in teams to quickly address all issues. The distances are significant. Almost all global agricultural machinery manufacturers are represented in the Argentine market. Winning the competition is not just about price.
The KVK 800 model is currently one of the most popular models. It is in high demand because it occupies a price and power segment not represented in the Argentine market. These are machines we took back from our clients through a trade-in scheme, offering them new, more advanced machines. Either the KVK 8060 if the farm is expanding, or updating their fleet with a new KVK 800. This way our clients always feel our support.
One season here is like 2 or 3 seasons in Belarus. Soybeans, corn, grain, the machinery works almost year-round. Therefore, maintenance and reliability are of utmost importance. Moreover, Argentina is essentially a testing ground for all Latin American countries. It's a bridge to other markets.
The environment is very challenging.
Belarusian machinery can work even in the harshest conditions, as has been proven multiple times. Today, these powerful machines can process thousands of hectares of land regardless of the specifics.
He buys Belarusian combines. Here's a perfect example. Another 150 kilometers from San Francisco, and we are in Santiago Temple, a small town in the middle of endless rural fields. Meet Diego Bassoni, owner of an agro-service company and our client. Together with his wife, he has trusted Gamselmash for years. His business relies on Belarusian machines. His company provides paid services for harvesting forage and grain crops,
helping farmers who don't have such machinery. They pay with money or grain, which the entrepreneurs then sell on the exchange, waiting for favorable prices. His loyal helpers are always nearby. First, he bought one combine, then a second, and recently updated one through a trade-in. Now he has 650 and 450 horsepower machines. Medium power machines allow him to save on fuel while meeting the needs of small farms.
We've been working with Gomselmash equipment for 10 years and are very satisfied. They are easy to use and repair. I've repaired them multiple times right in the field.
By the way, Argentine fields create challenging conditions for machinery. Dry grass plus dust cause high metal wear. You need to monitor the main components. Some work for 5 to 6 clients and already pay off the machine. Diego has 50 regular clients, so business is good. He says he would buy another Belarusian combine, but the drought makes it hard to predict demand.
Orders for machinery are increasing. People want to work with it, so we are increasing orders. It would be great to buy another combine, but the climate is an issue. The drought is serious, it affects us. Volumes and crop quality have decreased. The drought affects both us and our clients. But we believe the rains will come.
The operational period of a combine is 8 years or 8,000 engine hours. But with good care, it can last longer. He takes care of his machinery like the apple of his eye. Even Gomselmash employees note this, and the machines reciprocate.
The machinery is most in demand from March to May, but there is work throughout the year, depending on the crop. This includes grass, wheat, rye, and corn.
And we move on to the town of Boryso. It's also called the land of immigrants. Belarusian culture is loved here too, but this story is not about business.
Traveling through Argentina, you can literally feel at home. The city of Boryso, just an hour-and-a-half drive from Buenos Aires. Population just over 100,000 people. Republic of Belarus Street, one of the main streets in the city. But it's not just a name that connects locals with Minsk. We'll tell you more now.
Boryso is considered one of the centers of immigration to Argentina. During the war, people from various countries fled here in the first half of the last century. Among them were descendants of our compatriots. In 1941, a group of Belarusians founded the Belarusian House of Healthy People here. And in the 60s, the Belarusian diaspora club Vostok appeared, those who preserved their native culture far from home.
Our strength, our forte is dancing. We know Belarusian dances, and our main goal is to promote Belarusian culture so that people in Argentina know about Belarus. We do this in honor of our mothers, grandfathers, and their homeland. We also prepare Belarusian dishes like draniki.
The creative team Chaika is the pride of the Belarusian Diaspora Club. They gather here in their free time, rehearse, discuss concepts, and just socialize. You can't even call it a hobby, seeing the passion they have for what they dedicate their lives to.
All these costumes are from Belarus. They were brought to us. Some costumes we made ourselves. We look at what Belarusian groups wear at home and try to recreate these outfits by hand here.
Costumes are, of course, a challenge. It's an important part of the process, but the desire is there. Chaika has a decent wardrobe. They make some themselves, and the embassy has helped. So new outfits arrive even from thousands of kilometers away.
We don't isolate ourselves. We are open to everyone, regardless of nationality. We try to keep up with Belarus, how our country is developing, and tell everyone we know about it so that everyone knows and loves Belarus. What happens around the Republic causes great concern, but I see that everything is fine in Belarus.
Marina, Irina, and other members of Vostok have a clear reverence for Belarusian cuisine, traditions, and culture. The first thought after talking to them is that it's a pity not all Belarusians love and respect their own culture as much.
I'm proud to represent Belarus. I was fortunate to see the land of my ancestors, and it's wonderful. I'm very happy to have visited Belarus. The first thing I remember is the snow. It was very cold. I liked it. The city of Minsk, the landscapes in Belarus, Belarusians are very hospitable. We were warmly welcomed.
This morning, the club is bustling with activity. There's an important performance tonight. They will also treat the townspeople to Belarusian dreniki. It's important to get everything done, not forget anything, and still have energy for the audience and guests. But no one refuses an interview. Our camera is the first from Belarusian TV to reach Borisov.
Although I'm Argentine, I have the honor of being the granddaughter and daughter of Belarusians, and to preserve and support their living culture here in Argentina. For me, Chaika represents my homeland and what we do. It's a great honor for me to represent the country. We worry about Belarus, the armed conflicts around it concern us, and we try to do everything possible at our level to promote peace.
Irina even has a tattoo with Belarusian symbols. It's important to note that everything the club does is purely voluntary. The participants receive no money, just the call of the heart and love for Belarus.
I joined the club thanks to my grandmother. I love Belarusian dances, national costumes, and culture. I'm very happy to be a part of this club and country. I want to pass this on to my children.
It's an amazing feeling to see familiar landscapes and outfits 13,000 kilometers from Belarus. And this is our favorite. In his merch, he was hard to miss on the streets of Argentina. He has never been to Belarus, has no relatives there, but Belarus in Argentina has become his second home.
Although I'm Argentine, the Belarusian flag is like a second home to me. I fell in love with Belarusian culture. I want to do everything to keep it alive and thriving, even thousands of kilometers from home. Irina brought me this shirt from Belarus, and I agree with this phrase. You must fight for your homeland, protect your country. This theme is close to us Argentines too.
And this is not an empty statement, as the topic of the war over the Falkland or Malvinas Islands still stirs Argentina. That's a story for another episode. Let's return to Borisov. Every year in October, the city comes alive with national colors. Music, costumes, courtyards, and of course dances, copies, "26 communities participate in the Diaspora Club's festival. They prepare for it as seriously as athletes. Costumes, numbers, acrobatic sketches, and dances. The competition lasts a month, and this time participants took the stage for the 46th time.
We highly value the Belarusian Club and its members. It is extremely important to us that this community works with young children, and the Belarusian Club makes a huge contribution to the city's development. I haven't been to Belarus myself, but the theme of peace and what I hear about your country resonates with us.
A festival in a small Argentine town serves as a great example for modern leaders. This is how we should live in the modern world. Together, respecting each other's traditions, views, and culture. And this is a place where politics is neither needed nor important. On one stage, Ukrainians and Russians, Belarusians and Europeans, Israelis and Palestinians dance together. Under one roof, they try authentic dishes at national pavilions, where everyone is welcome. A year ago, it was the Argentine Belarusians who won this festival. Watching their performance today, the jury's decision is beyond doubt. The show, the drama, the emotions, the smiles, children, adults, and youth, all in a unified effort. They have maintained a high standard for years and are very concerned about each performance and the synchronization of movements. Such love cannot be faked, let alone bought. They don't know the language, but they accept Belarusians as their own and carefully preserve the culture, even on the other side of the world. This was the final point, but it turned out to be the main theme of our journey through Latin America, where politicians, journalists, businessmen, city dwellers, and ordinary farmers sincerely spoke to Minsk with such understandable and simple words. The voice of a vast continent and a big world, hearing which both politics and attitudes towards Belarus in this part of the globe should become much clearer to you.
Hello, Belarus.
Hello, Belarus.
Hello, Belarus.
Belarus on 4 continents. Watch in the next episode.
We are crossing the Atlantic Ocean, 11,000 kilometers. And hello, Africa!
Everything needed for the economy, everything needed for the further development of countries, blocks, industries, is all here. Africa is the continent of the future.
I wish I could send all these flowers to Belarus.
We love Belarus very much and hope that our tea will receive the same love.
Tea is Kenya's green gold.
London has not apologized for past events.
A huge problem for Kenya is our dependence on the IMF and the World Bank.
Right now, we earn about $2 to $3 a day.
I work here because I have no other choice.
Kilometers on both sides of Narok are occupied by so-called hustlers.
Kenya is the largest economy. It is the hub for all of East and Central Africa.
In Kenya, Lukashenko is called a strong president.
He is capable of uniting your state, which means he is a leader whose example we would like to follow. That's what I know.
The meeting of our presidents was thrilling. Your country is not dependent on other countries.
Belarus produces its own food, and that is very good.
Environmental protection is a relevant issue for us, and I believe Belarusians have excelled in this.
We need to ensure our food security, so we want to cooperate with Belarus and learn from your experience.
We Kenyans value friendship. We are very easily inspired by ideas.